I want to spend just a few minutes to tell you about the new Department of Housing Stability at the city. Is it new? Yes. The mayor signed it into executive authority on October 23rd. So pretty recent. So I'm going to just talk through some of the things that we have, but I want to spend, again, more of the time listening to concerns, action, all of that. So next slide. How we've organized this department is really around what we would call outcomes. So what is it that you are looking for? So we have a Department of Housing Stability, a division that would focus on keeping people in their homes and also helping to prevent involuntary displacement as much as we're able. The deputy director over that area is James Ginsburg, who's here at the table. He is also the deputy director over homelessness resolution, which is supporting residents experiencing a housing crisis and connecting people to short-term and permanent housing, which I understand to be the main action. And then the final area is really housing opportunity. How do we create and preserve housing opportunities that are affordable and provide access to those so that you know how to access them? Because I've certainly heard already in this role some frustration about where do I go what to access those affordable housing resources that we created. I was also asked to mention some of the new resources that have been talked about recently. So we have bridge housing vouchers, okay? So bridge housing is basically the idea of how do we help get people inside while they're getting connected to that longer term resource. And so it's to get inside at a motel room, at an apartment, and then work with an organization that has supports for you to get documentation, to get all the things that you would need to be ready to be in a longer term lease. Besides the bridge housing, we also have capital improvements to the shelters. I know there's going to be a little bit more information about lockers today. We're also funding 600 lockers in shelters at the Denver Rescue Mission, different locations. So those will be staffed lockers. We're also doing accessibility modifications. So there'll be an elevator at the Lawrence Street shelter. There'll be push bars at different entrances to different shelters. Those kinds of mobility improvements overall. Also looking for hours to be expanded and expanded services, adding behavioral health specialists, adding more housing navigation, adding other services overall. One of our most recent preservation projects, which is a place that's already affordable and keeping it affordable, was the Olin Hotel. And so that's going to remain affordable with a new investment from the city. And then, as many of you know, we also acquired as a city the Crossroads Shelter. There were others who were interested in buying that property, and so we went in to make sure that we could keep that location for shelter right now.
Is that place in Westwood bed
I'll go through this real quick and then get some more comments. So other investments, as we look at this new department and we look at the $72 million that we have to deploy, we're looking at how can we have increased emphasis on prevention, investments in permanent supportive housing. For those of you who don't maybe know that term, it's an official term from HUD, basically saying how do we get services wrapped around with housing. And then emphasis on rapid rehousing. So how do we get people quickly back into housing after they've had a housing crisis? So those are some of our points of emphasis. Why are we looking at this department? Because we have this whole spectrum of need, and I think it's come up in your comments a lot already today. There's all sorts of people experiencing homelessness, and all across the spectrum of need for affordable housing, we see lots of stories of lots of different people. So at 100% of area median income, that's the highest income that we would serve, maybe with some kind of home ownership. You'll see a big majority is our affordable rental, and that would be primarily from from the very lowest income to about 80% of the AMI, or area median income. That's what that stands for, so the middle point of incomes. And then you have all of the supports for people experiencing homelessness as well. That represents right now, if you look at people who are spending more than 30% of their income on housing, which is a lot of people. It's more than 100,000 households in Denver that are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And so I just wanted to ground you, and this is what the whole department is looking at, is how do we work across this big spectrum and help serve everybody that we can. Next slide. One of the things that I heard too was the action. So where is the housing, what housing is there? Right now there's about 320,000 units of housing in Denver. That's like all housing. So that's all single family housing, that's all apartment housing, all of that. There's about 320,000 units. The income restricted units, so of that, 22,000, more than 22,000 are income restricted. So that means that you have to show that you have an income on that earlier spectrum in order to access those units. So just wanted to give you a sense. That's about 7% of the housing in Denver. Okay? We also have a 3-year shelter expansion plan, or shelter strategies. Overall, this shelter strategy looks at how are we serving all people who are experiencing homelessness, how are we triaging people based on their needs, and how are we tailoring more residential shelter. So one of the big, I'd say, components of this plan is how do we, in the last step, connect people to housing pathways. So how do we have shelters that are more 24/7, that you have assigned beds, that you have lockers, that you have places to put your things, and how do we make that a 24/7 accessed shelter. We just announced a new women's shelter that will be like that, and it'll be smaller, it's 25 beds, and it's really designed for how do we get people stabilized in a more trauma-informed space that I heard over here, and then get them connected to housing. The idea behind the shelter plan. We'll go to the next one. And so some of the things that we've already done, we've increased funding for rapid rehousing and rapid resolution. So that's helping with small things that help people in their first few days at a shelter to get back to housing or to support networks. We announced some private and public funding together to do those shelter improvements and bridge housing that I mentioned. And then we purchased Crossroads Shelter. So where can you go for more information right now? 311, 211, website, lots of peer navigators, lots of different organizations. We're at the beginning of this department. We know that this is one of the things that we need to work on, is how to access that. What? Yeah. Never have any information of your experience. Yeah. And this is exactly why we say access is one of the biggest things, that it's not
But
healthy
that's
right now.
supposed to be the biggest access, 211. That's supposed to be it. Like you go there and you're there.
And what do you hear when you call?
We don't have anything available right now. They give you the same shelter, the one downtown, and that's all it's packed in that state. Nobody would do it.
So you're calling for housing and you get a shelter reference that you already are aware of.
There's nothing new. You already know everything. I mean, you probably know more than them.
Exactly.
And that's fine.
So the number you're calling is just not helpful.
Right, no. The 211, the 311.
And there's not, I have called it, I know somebody asked me to call it, and I have called it, and I would say that there's inconsistent level of information. So that's one of the things that we know that we want to address.
All I'm saying is, when you don't like your homeless, and see where the.
Do you want to facilitate this part?
I'm fine if you want to.
Go ahead.
Okay,
No, go ahead.
okay.
I'll write things down.
When you become homeless, it's just a trauma. It's an emergency. You need to have information. When, like this gentleman said, when you call 211 and you don't get information, then what happens? And if you're on the street, then you're messed with the police and everything else. At the same time, what in the hell is wrong with this city? Now, there's 23,000 empty luxury apartments, and these doggone shelters, you people can't get into a shelter, you have to have a lottery. It's a lottery system to get into a shelter. You know, my daughter went through this a couple weeks ago, and I'll tell you one thing. She said, and I said it at city council, quit gambling with people's lives. This is what you're doing.
Where did you experience a lottery to get into shelter? Can I just ask a clarification?
Let me come
Where
back
did
here.
you experience a lottery to get into
WHI,
shelter?
the Rescue Mission, all of them. Same.
Meredith House.
Okay.
And also, Dolores Project, she tried to get in both of them, neither one of them it was, and you don't even, if you keep on calling, okay, you don't know until 5 o'clock, so then what are you supposed to do? Yeah,
You can't work
yeah,
because you gotta,
that's another
if
thing.
you work, you gotta be homeless. If you work, you gotta be homeless. Either you choose. You go to a dirty shelter, don't make no money, and starve, or you just be homeless and work and try to get together.
Okay.
We've got 19.
Which way?
I'll come back here in a second. Let me get this gentleman.
Yes. You know,
So the director of the new housing department's unaware that most of the shelters require a lottery in order to get in.
They say, well, you guys should have jobs and stuff like that, but you know, how are we supposed to have jobs if you guys at 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning when we have our interviews are telling us, hey, you gotta move your stuff, and you got 20 minutes to do it, okay? And this has happened to us every bit of 30 times in the past 3
They
months.
come at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning also.
Okay, 2, 3 times. You know, and then if you don't move your stuff, when you do get back, they throw 90% of your stuff away anyway, and you're just a tenant. And I live on the streets, me and my wife right here both live on the streets, you know? And we had to move our stuff at 6:30 last night, okay? And then this morning, 7:30 in the morning, we was gonna go do some stuff, go out and try to find jobs and stuff. Cops said, now you gotta pack your stuff, gotta pack your stuff. Well, I was supposed to go look for a job and get jobs, and they're just sitting up here, they don't want us getting jobs, okay? They don't want it, they want us to miss breakfast, they want us to miss dinner, they want us to miss lunch, okay? Because, to be honest with you, the city, the way we feel is that the city would feel that if they starve us to death and they freeze us to death, then we'll either run away or we'll die, and when we die, it's less of a problem. You know? And that's just the way we feel, because I just lost, they just threw out $250 worth of our food stamp food 4 days ago, okay? And it was all brand new. The city workers come up, picked up both of our coolers, threw it in the back of a garbage truck, and crushed it away.
Well, tell them about the tea. Tell them about the tea too.
Oh, yeah.
The tea.
Yeah, my wife,
Ditches away and
yeah, $1,700 worth of dishes that the city bought her in June. They just threw them in the trash, and I said, why did you guys throw them in the trash? They said, because her teeth are biohazard.
You hear that, Wendy Shay? That's wrong. That's nasty.
Okay.
You know, I've got an incident with you know, and it's awful, that this town is just
we're not
awful.
even halfway done with our list of items that we no longer have.
Yeah.
And we're taking
Right here, I've got a page and a half of stuff sitting right here, of stuff they threw out, and that's not even the beginning of the stuff they threw out.
Crossroads Shelter fed us water last night, so that we have one piece of meat and liquid to the top. That's what we get almost every day.
Let me come to this gentleman and then I'll
Okay, you got Samaritan House and Denver Rescue Mission, okay? You put all your eggs in that basket. You've got to spread them out more than that, okay? And the other thing is a working man shelter, okay? You got one, you got that Presbyterian church up there, they pay the data. If you need something like that, if you work at 2 or 3 in the morning and you get off, you're stuck. If you do night work in restaurants and stuff like I do, I'm stuck. I gotta sleep outside the rest of the night. Okay, I'll shut up.
I think the biggest issue that everyone's trying to come across here is it doesn't matter what the city offers. It doesn't matter what you try to handle, so what kind of program you try to put in front of us. How many hoops and ladders do we have to jump through to get this? Because I was in the new Genesis shelter on 17th and Sherman. I worked an early morning position. I was kicked out of there because I didn't have overnight work verification. I didn't work overnight. My job started at 3 a.m. That's not overnight. So now I'm out on the street. Now I lose my job because I'm not getting no sleep. Then you throw me, well, go to this place. Well, I can't. I'm homeless because of the Department of Corrections. How many people are felons out here walking the street?
I was born and raised here in Colorado Projects, down the East Side Projects. I worked at Curtis Park Swimming Pool. From a kid, from I was 13 to 25 years, I worked at Harley, Martin Luther King, 20th Street. I worked at I did all these jobs. This used to be a very nice thing to live in. It was fun growing up. okay? Like I said, at first, you know, they passed the weed law, and that became a thing, but now it's more than just the weed law, it's just petty greed. I don't know where this greed is coming from. I know when this one police station, the first police station, right there, split foot by the little building, right there, that was the first police station in Colorado. I remember RTD first came out, it was free. You had to pay nothing. Now it's $3. I remember when it was a dime. Okay, all this stuff is going up. And here it's gonna be 2020. Ain't nothing to change. Everything gonna go up. Well, the homeless gonna still be poor. The homeless gonna still be homeless. Y'all gonna see say go to the shelter. Who wanna stay in a nasty ass shelter where people don't even wipe their butt when they got the toilet, eating buckets and all that kind of stuff? I'm saying, I don't wanna be around. I see my car, because I don't wanna be around no stuff like that. It's my first time experiencing stuff like that, but something need to be coming and it needs to be done quick as possible. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys keep saying like you have your bridge house, right? Yeah.
Okay, so I need you to speak up loud enough so they can hear.
Okay, you guys keep talking about bridge housing, right? And it don't have any such thing because I never heard of any resources like that. You don't help like to like say you moving into an apartment, you know, deposit or whatever. You know, it has stuff like that around the state. But I'm trying to move into a new apartment, and I'm calling to get that. I don't know where it's from.
Okay.
There's no such thing.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm hearing sort of like two different things with the objections to this plan as this is how we're addressing homelessness now, and then referring people again to the 3-in-1 and the 2-in-1 numbers. One, it seems like one theme that keeps coming up has to do with like the layers of bureaucracy that we jump through, and then we call 3-in-1 if they don't know anything, and so that's kind of its own problem. But at the same time, alongside it, there's this other thing of the problem of scarcity of resources, and I didn't see anywhere, and I might have missed it if it was in the weeds there, so